you can see some unbelievable technique that you think, gosh, isn't that wonderful, isn't that amazing? But it's not a case of just picking up a pipe and doing it. It's, you know, it'll take you 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 years or a lifetime to kind of perfect it.
What is Nick Wirdnam?
Basically, my work is it's a very personal kind of investigation into personal experiences. My background has actually been in perhaps more traditional methods of making glass, which had been vessel making, decorative glass, kind of object making. And my work has now, and again this is because of personal experiences, my work has actually changed quite dramatically from what was, I guess, functional decorative work to what's become very sculptural. I was born in Portsmouth, in the south of England. My father was in the services, he was in the RAF, and so we travelled. I ended up getting a holiday job in a glass studio on the Isle of Wight, and this glass studio had only just begun, and it was called Isle of Wight Glass, and it was run by a very successful designer, artist, Michael Harris. I ended up staying there about 9 years. I had always liked to work with my hands, but this was something completely different. This was a material and a medium that just responded and behaved in quite a different way. Unlike other materials, glass actually has a behaviour of its own, and that even if the maker does nothing to it, the glass still does something. Whilst it's fluid, whilst it's workable,
yes,
it's moving, and it really becomes. And often people kind of describe glass making, because what I do is I work from a furnace, so the glass I work is actually always hot.
Yeah.
And because it moves, it's a little bit like a bullfight. That you tease it and you prod it and you get to know it, but it always does something unexpected. So to take a technique and to employ it the way you found it is not necessarily what I want to do. I'd like to, when I am kind of developing techniques, or that I may well see kind of techniques other people use, but I would prefer not to use them as I found them. I would like to find them, contribute to them, and then put them back, and perhaps other people might draw on that too. Because Isle of Wight was very successful, it had a lot of kind of travelling people that would kind of come through, even though it was in a fairly kind of remote location. It had a reputation that seemed to kind of draw people from Australia, and we had a number of Australians that would come through and visit. I mean, Australian glass at that time was very much in its infancy.
So when did you get here? When did you arrive?
I got here in about '83, and I'd never kind of intended to stay, but I just happened to still be here. My influences have more been from Italy and America than they have, and Sweden also, rather than French. And I think that obviously the Italian Italy has a very strong connection with glass, and particularly Venice.
Yeah, glass.
Yeah. And now probably kind of contemporary glass, Seattle in America. The studio glass movement, which began in the early '60s, was one to take it away from that kind of, the mechanical, the clinical,
So it's going away from the industrialisation of glass.
Very much so, yeah. I think the glass operates at 3 levels. There is the commercial end of glass, there's the studio production end of glass, which is kind of border on kind of commercial, I guess, and then there would be probably what many people might describe as art glass. And I think that Australian art glass is an absolute world leader.
Really?
You're not confined by a kind of, I suppose, a kind of a cultural identity in that aesthetic, that we're kind of open to do anything. probably about 7 or 8 years ago, that I really felt that this kind of vessel making thing was, in some ways, I loved the process and I loved working with glass the way I had, but it was kind of getting a little bit predictable. I wanted to do something else with glass, that people didn't want to put flowers in or put up on a mantelpiece or whatever. I mean, I wanted to use glass in a different way, and that would be, you know, to go in a more sculptural way. And I was inspired by people like William Morris, who's an American glass artist, and Pino Signoretto, who's an Italian.
What were they doing?
Particularly in William Morris's work is just the kind of sense of emotion that I could see in his work. And I really kind of connected with it. I mean, it wasn't comparable. I mean, it wasn't, you didn't like it because of its colour, and you didn't like it because it seemed to kind of glow. But there was his kind of finishes and his surfaces and his kind of my interpretation of his work just really kind of made it kind of a
Did you ever meet him?
Actually, I've just done a workshop with him. Yeah.
Oh, recently?
Yeah.
Here?
No, actually in America. I went to, and I have been for a number of times, to a glass school in America called Pilchuck. I don't know whether you've heard of it. And they conduct workshops there, and this was in combination with a conference that they had there in Seattle. They had the gas conference there, and they got some of the biggest names and some of the greatest contributors to Pilchuck to actually teach workshops. No, Billy Morris hadn't actually done a workshop for 10 years. But this was the first one, and it was just like, it's really good.
Do you work with lead in your glass as well?
No, we don't. I don't use any lead at all.
Why?
There's absolutely no point.
No, I'm serious.
No, and I'm serious too.
Yeah, but I'm really serious.
Yeah, well, I'm more serious. Lead does two things, as far as I know. It reduces the melting temperature of the glass, so you don't need to use so much energy.
Oh, so that's the real reason, okay.
That's one reason. Mm-hmm. But actually the real reason for, I think, adding lead is to actually make it physically softer. And because it is physically softer, it actually leads itself to being cut. So I do remember many years ago when I did work at Isle of Wight Glass, and we had some visitors in, as often there were. And this guy came in and he said, "Oh, do you make car windscreens?" And Mike said, "Oh," he said, "No, we don't." And he said, "Well, what about wing mirrors?" And he was actually serious.